a.m. You know what time it is, and that time is time for Issues at Hand here on Church of Uganda Family TV. My name is Bruno Edgard. Thank you for joining us for this morning's discussion. And as always, Issues at Hand is proudly brought to you by Protea Hotel in Tebe. Please make sure you make a reservation and a booking today while time is still on your side. And of course, you need a lot of time to go and enjoy the amenities. Just to say, I know there are people who go to a hotel like for a night or 2 nights, but with the beauty and wonderful landscape that is at Protea Hotel in Tebe, trust me, you'll need more than 1 night. So make a reservation and booking today. Now, on today's discussion, we are talking about torture. It's a big issue here in Uganda. We've seen a lot of people being tortured by, well, there's torture in families, but there's also torture as far as security agencies are concerned. When it comes to some political activists, they have been victims of torture, and so it has become a vice that is eating up the soul of our country, and that's why we are talking about it this morning. We're going to find out how can we curtail this vice in our society today. And with me to have this discussion is Mr. Kirya Mukalere Paul, who is a Communications and Advocacy Officer from African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims. You can abbreviate it as ACTV. Welcome to Issues at Hand this morning.
Thank you, the host for today. I appreciate the Family TV for giving us this opportunity to talk about torture and reflect on a number of things here and there, but also to be here for the first time. I've always heard of this Family TV. At times I watch it, and it is some Sunday teachings, but I'm happy that we are talking about even issues which affect our society, and torture is among them. My name is Paul Kirya Mukalere. I work with the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims.
Fantastic. And we shall start from there. What does African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims do exactly?
Yes, the center, like you abbreviated it, ACTV. Some people used to think that it is a TV station.
TV station. I can understand where the confusion comes from.
Why? How can a TV host a fellow TV? Yeah, but we are an NGO, a non-government organization. We started in 1993, August. We are making 30 years this year. Actually, wow. We have made 30 years this year.
Congratulations.
In the work of treating, rehabilitating survivors of torture, but also efforts in advocacy against the same. We are a team of medical doctors, social workers, physiotherapists, nurses, lawyers. That is who we are. And of course, in terms of where we are located, we have an office. Our head office is in Kanyanya, just opposite Gas Petrol Station there, along Gaza Road. Then we have an office in Gulu, Laivi Division. We have an office in Karamoja Sub-Region, Kabong. Then we also have an office in Kasese, in Mariwa Sub-County. So, but we work across the entire country in terms of trying to fight acts of torture, and also for concerted efforts with state and non-state actors in Uganda.
Wow, fantastic. And later on, we're going to talk about what specifically ACTV is doing when it comes to fighting torture in our society. But let's help understand this issue. When torture is a generic term that is used for so many activities, because we have torture in families where, for instance, a husband beats a wife or a wife beats a husband. But as far as ACTV is concerned, when you talk about torture, what exactly do you mean?
Actually, to the person, common person out there, the ordinary person, the wananchi, usually we don't like using so much of the legal terminologies. And like you have asked, what is torture? According to our application in terms of treatment, the services we do, the advocacy services we conduct, they are based on the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act, which was enacted in 2012 by the president of Uganda himself. It came into law, and it defines torture as any act or mission, meaning someone can be liable for acts of torture by doing something or not doing something. It is an act or mission done by anyone. You see, it doesn't matter whether in civilian clothes or you are in security attire, done by anyone to another person, and that act or mission causes severe pain or suffering on the mind or body of the person that act is being that occasion to, and usually for a purpose. The purpose can be to punish someone. It can be to force a confession. You see, the purpose can be to intimidate. The purpose can be to coerce, forcing someone to do something or forcing someone not to do something. You see, I don't want you to talk. If you talk, this will happen to you. I want you to speak what you did. So that is what really torture is. It is any action done or failure to take action when you are expected by authority to take action, but you don't take the action. And because of those things, pain, severe pain or suffering is occasioned to another person to whom it has been inflicted. So it is that, the severity of the pain or suffering and the purpose. Why? You see, that is it. So meaning, if my wife stops me from watching family TV at home and wants to watch Bukede TV, because of some those plays usually ladies like watching, it is not an act of torture. Usually we look at the purpose. At times we do prison visits as an organization, and we want to appreciate the Uganda Prison Service. Every year they give us that permission to access places of detention. And usually some of the issues, for example, you may find with some inmates can say, I have an itching body, I have fleas are biting me, but it's an issue of hygiene. You see, it is not intended. It is not a punishment, or it is not. There is no. The purpose is not
that our mission, because yes, as far as and I agree with you. I'd like to also applaud Uganda Prison Services for what they are doing as far as taking care of prisoners in Uganda. However, your prison still has to be, any prison has to be up to standard to ensure that the living conditions are safe. So if you're talking about fleas, it means there's been an omission.
Yes. Now, in fact, what you are talking about, it now goes to, it would lead us to another discussion altogether. Because when you are talking about issues to do with torture, of course, you can't, human rights don't operate in a vacuum. They are not enjoyed in a vacuum. Meaning, if someone, what it means is that the violation of one right can lead to the violation of what? Their right. You are talking about that. Let me give the simplest example. Right now, it is public knowledge. When you Google, or even when you access some of these justice law and other sector reports, you realize that the capacity of our prisons in Uganda cannot accommodate all the inmates there. But it is not the issue. At times now their issue is it intentional? It is another thing, or it is about the resources. So, and that takes us to the discussion of economic, social, cultural rights, because those are social rights. You are supposed to sleep in a clean environment. You are supposed to ABCD, eat good food, such things. So, and those are things. With time, you find that they feed into one another. Otherwise, for now, that is what torture is, and it is not exclusive to people in uniform. That UPDF, whenever people talk about torture, they talk about police, UPDF, yes. But we are seeing torture in homes. these days, torture in homes.
Actually, that's exactly what I want us to come to next. As far as ACTV is concerned, and one of the duties that ACTV carries out is the treatment and rehabilitation of torture victims. So, as far as the victims are concerned, what are these victims saying about the kind of torture they have that they have dealt with, that they have been victims of?
Yeah, in most cases, you find that there are 3 forms of torture, which are at least known, which are clearly, for now, known under the law. There is physical torture, which is the beating, usually which we are used to. Then there is the psychological torture. I always tell people that these are the wounds which are not seen. Yeah? There is always a story beyond the wound you want to see. Someone may not have wounds you can see, but they are tortured. At times, these physical wounds can heal after 5 years or 1 year, but an invisible wound may even take a generation or forever. Why? Because when you talk about victims of torture or survivors, we are not talking only about the person onto whom this act of torture or omission was inflicted. No. We also talk about the people who depend on this person, the secondary survivors of torture, the children, the spouse, the community, the people who are affected because of this person. Because maybe he was a farmer, but he can no longer dig, now he can't take his children to school. Those children become secondary victims of torture. You see? So in terms of its effects in the family, mainly it presents like that most homes, we have seen families breaking down because of acts of torture on their relative. So in terms of effects, they are not exclusive to social, but they even go up to the economic, they even go up to the political. And we always talk about, whenever we are engaging the state actors, ministries, departments, and agencies of state, because they always give us this audience, we always tell them that torture should not be looked at as a political issue. And once we start looking at it as a political issue, that's when we get blinded in terms of what action we can collectively have to rid the vice in Uganda.
Especially since, like you've said, there are other issues of torture, especially in families. Exactly. And focusing on it only as a political issue will mean that we are not paying attention to the rise of torture in especially families and homes.
Yes, exactly. So for us, we always say, let us talk about torture as a national issue, an issue of national concern. Imagine a person who has been tortured. There are some people. Let me give the example of the Kawesi murder suspects in the late Kawesi IGP. May his soul rest in peace. Those people, court found out, ruled that they were tortured, the suspects. And an order of compensation was 83 million shillings, each to the 21 suspects. Imagine how much money is that. And can't it buy drugs in a healthcare center? At the national level, state, in the villages out there. The other time we were looking at, there is that hospital people are laughing at, where the minister, Honorable Variomus, was first taken to before being airlifted. People are laughing. But that is the effect. That at the end of the day, the money which would have been spent on refurbishing health institutions, money which would have been used in refurbishing the health education sector, the money which would have been used in agriculture, is now being used to compensate a single individual. You see, and so at the end of the day, you find even at times the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs saying, no, we don't have enough money to compensate these people. You see? So at the end of the day, we are doing, those people engaged in acts of torture, they are not doing a service to Uganda, they are doing a disservice to the state. You see? Because as we speak, the outstanding amount in areas to people to be compensated is over 3 billion shillings. Now, imagine what 3 billion shillings can do in a health facility or a country or a government school. So that is what we are talking about. But also, we are talking about that if a tortured society is a crippled society, that someone in a home, a parent who has been tortured, that effect goes to the child. The child may not concentrate. You see, and we're talking about issues to do with the physical effects, the surrounding around them, but also the psychological effect. And at the end of the day, it affects nation building. Because if this person used to go to work, maybe he was a taxi driver, or he was a boda rider, or he was a farmer, but his leg has been amputated, he now has to sit and be taken care of. But imagine the revenue the state would be losing out of this person sitting at home and not being productive. So torture kills productivity because it cripples society, and at the end of the day, it affects nation building as a whole. So that is what we always emphasize.
And that is very pivotal to know the high risk of not paying attention to fighting this vice in society. And speaking of which, the Uganda Human Rights Commission has laid out very startling detail that as far as torture victims are concerned, the number is up to 37% since if you're to use the scale of 2021. So we are seeing that even the police report of 2021 also alluded to the same fact that torture is on the rise. What is the cause of this?
Okay, for me, I would want to, you see, in most cases, what the Uganda Human Rights Commission is stating is very correct. There is a time when Uganda was summoned, went to answer. You see, accountability, issues of accountability are very important as a state to its people. When Uganda went to the UN, United Human Rights, and was about mainly the Committee Against Torture, issues of torture, Uganda being answerable to acts of torture and what action has been taken. Uganda, first of all, we appreciate Uganda for passing the law against torture called the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act. Also, it went ahead and passed the regulations which try to operationalize, offer guidance in terms of the enforcement of the law. Uganda has gone ahead to work with civil society organizations in terms of building capacity of its own officers, UPDF, police, etc., etc. However, the issue is, at the end of the day, when they asked, well, there is a state official who went ahead and said that some of these issues are being exaggerated because of our report. However, if you have the Uganda Human Rights Commission year in, year out, writing about issues of torture, reporting about them, documenting them, and it is an independent institution, a constitutional body emanated to monitor human rights and also promote human rights in the same. When you find the UPDF itself punishing its officers for acts of torture, you have seen a number of them. Now, the discussion can be, is that sentence deterrent or it is a light sentence, 6 months, etc. But still, action is being, it still gives a message that torture is happening. When you find Uganda Police Force coming out every time saying, we condemn torture by officers. Why should you get why should you get information by forceful means? So, in essence, as a country, we impliedly agree that the acts of torture, even to put the nail to the coffin, the president of Uganda himself has written letters to security agencies saying stop torturing Ugandans. Use other means to get information, scientific means. So at the end of the day, we all agree. We may be using a different language, but still speaks to the same thing. But the issue is always about the will. You see, I always say people, these statements, I get tired of statements. Statements stop at condemning. But what action comes after the condemnation? Let me give you a simple example. Are you aware that corporal punishment, I'm talking about now schools, corporal punishment, are you aware it is a crime?
Yes, it is.
But which school, some of you have children in schools. How many schools don't cane?
There are very few.
Very few. So what is the state doing about it? Because it is in our laws. Even the amended Penal Code Act has corporal punishment as a crime. When you look at the anti-torture law, the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act, the punishment for corporal punishment is not less than 7 years in prison, or a fine of 3.6 million shillings. So the issue is that what are we doing with the laws we have in place? You see? And at times, since this is family TV, I always tell people that laws cannot be, without laws, without morality, laws can also suffer in terms of implementation. We always look at the house helps. Some of the clips which come out, the house helps beating up a child, torturing a child, and you ask yourself, yes, it is a crime, but as a right from the family unit, how do we treat these people? Is it possible that some of us may be violating the rights of these house helps, and maybe some of them, because of the too much trauma, they met it on the child? So it is also another way of reflecting on some of these things, and I think that is where we go wrong when we just look at only security agencies, but we don't, because maybe finally on that, a police officer to be recruited, a UPDF officer to be recruited, they come from our homes.
That's what I wanted to allude to. That is it that the lack of the will to implement this, which is an issue that many of us have with the government of Uganda, that we have a very good laws in Uganda, well detailed, well spelled out, well, apart from some, like the Computer Misuse Amendment Act that still has ambiguity. However, the implementation of these laws is what we fault government for sometimes. And does this lack of will, again, like you said, we don't have to politicize the issue in terms of saying that it's only government, because it's a society issue. So the lack of will to implement these laws that prohibit torture, is it also a statement and a reflection on the lack of moral values in our society today? Because it seems to point out to the fact that many people think it's not such a big deal. You know, you can beat, if corporal punishment, kids have to be disciplined, it's not a big deal. We grow up, when we grew up, we were beaten. What's that? There's nothing big about that.
Yeah, the role, exactly. And that is what some of these things which are affecting the implementation of these things. There's one time I remember, it was 2016. We had rolled out our advocacy campaigns in terms of awareness to schools. However, there is a challenge we faced. Some head teacher even asked me, Paul, are you promoting human rights or you are promoting indiscipline in schools? You see?
That was what a teacher said.
Now, for me, at the end of the day, whenever you find issues to do with morals and law, there is always usually a clash. You are bound to clash. Why? Some people think some people tend to think law is promoting immorality and not promoting morals or rights. But you see, the standard we follow here is Uganda committed itself to some regional instruments, some international instruments, Convention of the Rights of the Child, etc., etc. We even have a Children's Act in Uganda. The issue is, at the end of the day, by the time we enact these laws, by the time we sign on some of these statutory instruments, we are committing ourselves to take action. And the standard we are using is the issue of natural justice, morals, and we only uphold culture or morals which are not in violation of what? Of law. So that is, because otherwise someone will say, there's someone one time asked me that, female genital mutilation is what? Is a crime in Uganda. Then they asked me, but isn't forceful circumcision of a man a violation of human rights? So you see, that is some of these things. And
that's a point.
Yeah, and also when you look at the church, for me I always ask, what is the church doing about human rights promotion? For example, at home, from the homes, because these people come to church to pray. You see, they Sunday school. You see, what do we teach our children? Because I believe religious leaders have a role to play in terms of prevention of issues of torture. Otherwise, at times we promote impunity indirectly, because there is a project we are doing in Karamoja and time, but the challenge we faced was the issue of morality, where the state attorney could say, you see, I can get these people who beat up their wives at home, even children, for ill treatment, etc. You take them to a police station. In the evening, their wives are going, they are saying, give me my husband. What will I tell my children? That I have arrested their father? What will I tell my community? So you can imagine how society also impacts on the enforcement. So the will is not only the state will. The will goes broader than that. It goes up to, it ends up at home, at the family unit.
To the family
yes,
level.
The will
so
to implement.
On that note, because
yes.
A lot of people say government is not doing this, government should do this, government should do this. But since we have seen the issue of torture is broader, it goes beyond state level and it goes down to the family unit, what then can we do to improve this will to fight acts of torture in this country?
I think it is also, in terms of, we need to continue creating awareness. And we can, once we do it alone, once people leave it to only the civil society, people will start thinking that, these people are just speaking because of funding from this one. So
from
these
foreign
people,
donors.
They want money. That's why they are exaggerating. There are some people even who say that some torture cases are accident cases. But then you ask yourself, okay, every year, on average, ACTV we register and rehabilitate over 1,000 cases. And imagine we are not in the entire country. Our offices are not located in the entire country. Some of these cases, we do some home visits, we do some field visits. But imagine, over 1,000. Then look at the reports of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Now, even if, okay, let us say 10 of the cases are accident victims, what happens to the rest? So we have to move away from giving excuses and account, but also be seen to account. We have already told, whenever I meet with the Uganda police, and we have a very good working relationship with them. Why? Because for us, we believe in transformative approach than the criticizing all the time. Criticisms are not solutions. And we always...
So working together.
Yes, working together. And we always, what is the problem? The law is there. You are saying there were no regulations. The regulations are there. What is the problem? Yes, you are saying you are disciplining them. But why don't you take these people to court? Take them to court. You know, police has its police courts. But we want them to go to the mainstream courts of law. So how they get a deterrent what? Effect of the law. And it can be a lesson for the rest of us. When you look at the UPDF is doing the same thing. It punishes, at times even, they have their courts. But we are saying, okay, can the punishments be deterrent enough? Why should you give someone 6 months? Yet the law even gives you up to 15 years punishment. It is about what it is about us doing. So the awareness creation is important, and it is important that even other institutions, the religious leaders, we have always, there is one time we had an engagement with the Interreligious Council Uganda. And the issue was, yes, much as torture is mainly looked at as a political issue, but it concerns all of us. So it is about each one of us. The church, do this awareness from your own level in terms of these people who come to you. You condemn acts of torture. You see, otherwise when you start saying condemn, spare the rod and spare the child, then, but the law is saying that is an act of torture. That is an act of ill treatment. So how do we reconcile the two? Lastly, I believe advocacy. You see, awareness, but also advocacy. Because advocacy engaging several actors with their different mandates. Uganda Human Rights Commission, security agencies, the Judicial Service Commission, etc., schools, etc. Why advocacy is painful. It can even take 30 years. But it is rewarding. Why? Because you are working. Why it takes long? You are working on someone's behavior, the perception, the attitude. If someone says, those ones are funded by foreign agencies, I mean, then it affects what?
The common goal.
Yes, changing mindset. Yes, culture. For me, my parent used to cane me. That's why I'm here. That is a perception you are trying to work on. It takes time for that attitude to go. You are seeing, and we have seen even some religious leaders engaging in acts of corporal punishment in their churches. You have seen these things have been viral, where believers lie down and they are caned for missing their previous service. So the challenge is too big for just civil society organizations. It needs all of us to do our part. And I always tell people that you cannot fight torture by treating. You cannot fight torture by rehabilitating. Here you are dealing with the symptoms.
Yes.
But the root cause is attitude, perception, and behavior. Right from home up to the offices we are given. Yeah, so that is what we believe, that we need support. And let us stop saying that now we need this for speaking because of donor money. No. This is our society. It is a Ugandan, at the end of the day, whose life is being wasted. And when we spoil this person's life, we are indirectly affecting the national development at the end of the day.
Definitely, and that discussion on solutions continues, because later on we are going to hear from you as to what ACTV is doing when it comes to taking the fight against acts of torture here in Uganda. You've heard it, it's a big issue, and it's not only about government alone. No, it involves each and every one of us, especially down to the family unit. That's why it's important that we renew our minds, like the Bible says. We transform our minds, we change our mindset about torture, and it starts with the small things like Mr. Paul has shared, things like corporal punishment, thinking beating is okay because it helps instill discipline. Yes, you might be saying that, but what you are innately doing is saying it's okay for people to be tortured, because especially when they're in discipline, which is illegal according to the law. And we are also going to furthermore talk about the issue of torture as far as the state is concerned. So you will still want to keep it locked here on Church of Uganda Family TV as we continue with issues at hand. When it comes to ACTV, it's my understanding that you released a report showcasing the fact that ACTV attributed 200 cases of torture when it came to certain victims, attributed these cases to police and the army. Now we have already talked about how this is it's an issue that doesn't involve talking about security agencies and government, but even the torture that's happening as far as our families are concerned. But also this is a big concern, especially when it comes to the ability as Ugandans to enjoy rights and freedoms that we have been given by the Constitution. Can you tell us more about this report and the findings as far as torture and security agencies are concerned?
Thank you so much. ACTV, the 30 years it has been into this work of documenting, treating, and rehabilitating, and advocacy, as well as legal support. Year in, year out, it is always the security agencies which come up. Of course, they say, but we are always the ones in the line. We are the ones with the community. So and for them, in most cases, they say this: if you find a lawless society, an officer, they are throwing stones at an officer. They also are getting a tear gun and throwing back. What do you expect at times? Some of these people have emotions. Yes, we appreciate that, but the best we can do, the police using their community affairs office, they can continue, because that community affairs office is supposed to be so much involved with the community. They are supposed to create awareness about the do's and don'ts during arrests. You see, the do's and don'ts during public order management. It mainly comes to that. And also, when it comes to the security agencies, again, it is how do we document these things? You have talked about the police crime reports. But for me, the time I've started, I've read those community, the police annual, the crime reports. Torture is never clear in those reports. It is child neglect, defilement, assault, grievous bodily harm, which usually come out. Then you ask yourself, okay, how are they documenting?
But isn't that torture in and of itself?
Yes, it can only clearly stand out as torture depending on which tools are they using to record these incidents. Because, like we said, Uganda already passed the regulations to the anti-torture law. Those regulations have forms which are very clear about how to record a torture-related incident. Because it is documentation aids investigation. Now, if something has been documented differently, how do you expect the CID to investigate fully in terms of... So, some of these... So, that is the advocacy bit we are doing with security agencies, that please let us utilize the regulations. They have the forms. Of course, there are issues here and there which are raised, and I think we are following up with them, the security agencies. And also, when it comes to Uganda Prison Service, they passed the standard operating procedures when it comes to issues of torture. You see, the do's and don'ts. It is also another positive in the right direction. You see, at the end of the day, it is about the journey. Before those years, I told you that advocacy is painful, but rewarding in terms of behavior, attitude, and perception. You look at recently, the president of Uganda himself, from moving away from we don't torture, to now saying stop torture. Writing a circular, a letter to police, stop torture. And even the security agencies coming out, UPDF, police, prisons, saying we condemn acts of torture. These are the measures we are going to take. That is the step. That is the direct, some baby steps, but very key. By the time you start seeing, you see our example that human rights are not privileges. But in terms of when it comes to promotion, protection of these rights, you need to work together with state institutions. You cannot prevent torture alone as civil society. So the will can only gradually be there once you have spoken to the attitude, the perception, and the behavior. You see, by the fact that even you can access places of detention, civil society, it's not only ACTV, there are a number of NGOs I know who have access. Now, the issue is, what are we doing? There is always that thing of civic space. It became a song, civic space. I always help that. Yes, before we make noise about the shrinking civic space, what have we done with the little space we have? You see? So we have to use it in a transformative way with these institutions. Yes, a police officer may be involved in an act of torture, but it's not true that every police officer is against promotion of human rights. So it is about being positive-minded also. So I speak to the civil side that also have the positive will in terms of openness, in terms of engaging the civil side, the state institutions, but also in our homes. How do we behave? You see, how do we behave around these people? A helper, a house help is not a slave. Under Article 44 of the Constitution, slavery is freedom from slavery or servitude is a non-derogable right. It is not justified in a way. You see, but you find if you are to open people's homes, you will find a rot. You see, so that is what more is. Only that now, because of social media, these acts are now being exposed. But also, talking of omission, I always ask myself, you people, where you stay, you may have a neighbor there engaged in acts of torture. What have you done about it? Or you just say, agomakage, that is omission. Because you have a duty to report human rights violations. Under the anti-torture law, you have a duty to report under Section 20. So as a public, how far are we with reporting? Because it is only, for me, we dream of a day whereby we report 1 million cases to police, and later we say, police, it is the end of the year, we reported 1 million cases, but you didn't take action. You see? So at the end of that is it. In terms of from homes, omission, the other time I always ask myself, some of those videos, the clips, for me, I don't open them, by the way, those clips. Why? Because I always know what is next. But I always ask myself, how can someone have 5 minutes? They are recording this incident, filming it, the beating, the kicking, then you even have time to even buy data and share on social media. You see, why don't you run to the nearest police station and report this? At times, it is prevention. You have a right also in a duty to prevent more harm. You see, you have seen acts of mob violence. For me, I don't call it mob justice. There is no justice in the mob. It is mob action or mob violence. You find someone allegedly has done something, before you know it, they want to ban him. And someone films. You have even seen some TV stations even showing a full image, video. Then you say, okay, what is your duty as someone who is filming? Can't you do beyond sharing? Don't you think if you had run to the nearest police station, because these numbers are public, these police numbers are public, don't you think more harm would have been avoided?
Actually, on that brings me now to this point about what ACTV is doing now. I know one of the things you mentioned in terms of ACTV's mandate is advocacy. So what is ACTV doing, especially when it comes to sensitizing us, the masses, about how the buck starts with us when it comes to the prevention of torture?
Actually, for us, we have continued creating awareness in communities. Every year, we do communities, physical dialogues, where we reach out to the people. Then also awareness on media platforms, the TV, like what we are doing now, thanks to Family TV, radio, now also using the social media. But also I've always asked people, okay, what is the reach of social media? Someone in my village, the other side, do they know Twitter? So it is about diversity. Radio talk shows, at times we reach out to them, at times even do home visits for issues to do with social integration and disintegration. We have also did trainings every year, trainings of security agencies, you see, about the law, but also issues to do with documentation.
And in your 30 years of advocacy as ACTV, what is the picture? Does it look like the message is hitting home, or do we need a lot more in terms of sensitizing the masses? Are people responding to the sensitization?
Okay, now let me answer it like that. There is a time some of our development partners got tired and were like, but the more you train these people, it is as if the more they torture. Are you training them to torture or to avoid torture? My answer is like this. Probably it could be issue of the will, but also probably it may also be right that now, because of the intensive and continuous awareness creation, the advocacy, people who used to fear coming out to report are now coming out to report. Because it is not true that all cases of torture in 2022 are going to be reported in 2022. It's not true that they will be reported in 2023. Some people even may get the courage of reaching out in 2025. So that is the appeal we make to the public. Report for timely action in terms of rehabilitation, because justice is not only going to court. and someone being sentenced, justice includes access to timely treatment, access to rehabilitation. Because if I don't document this thing in time, how do you expect the legal team to go ahead and have this evidence in time for? So it is about rehabilitation is a human right, and we need access to justice is holistic. It is not only going to court. So in terms of the steps you have done, for me, I think there are some milestones. Because for me, I don't look at treating and rehabilitating as a milestone. We are reacting to the root cause as a symptom here. But we are saying, can we prevent? That's why we pushed for the enactment of the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act. That was the work of ACTV, the Uganda Human Rights Commission, together with the Coalition Against Torture in Uganda. So we are saying that it is by working together. Even the regulations being passed, it was ACTV, Uganda Human Rights Commission, pushing. So we are now saying, okay, we have them. Can we now have the will to implement? We have the capacity to document. So now that's where we are moving to now. Yeah, we have the law, we have the regulations to enable you implement the law. Now, can we have the will? Oh, but we don't have capacity. Oh, can we start building capacity in terms of documentation? Because we are looking at it beyond going to court, but also people being treated in time, people being rehabilitated in time. You can't force someone to go to court. Someone can say, for me, people come to offices and say, for me, I don't want to go to court. Just treat me and I go. I fear being what? Taken back again. And that indirectly speaks to the abductions we are talking about. Abductions, the kidnappings. How many people are coming out to speak out against them? There is that fear. And that fear is promoted by lack of a witness protection law in Uganda. How am I protected? Some people even in your family say, Ofuniramuwa. You are going to the TV talk about some of these things. Ofuniramuwa. It's not about Ofuniramuwa. It's about the passion to speak out for the voiceless out there, for justice for all.
Indeed, and I wish we had more time because this conversation is really enlightening. But in a minute or less, please, what would you like us to go away with concerning our discussion today to fight torture in this country?
In summary, we all have a duty. As rights holders, we have a duty to report. As duty bearers, they have the duty to take action. You see, that is the only way we can get justice. If you don't report in time, how do you expect me to act in time? And how do you expect justice to be seen, to be done? So all of us have a duty. Duty to report and duty to take action. That is my parting shot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paul, for reminding us about our duty to take action when it comes to this fight against torture. May we start today, this very moment, make an intentional decision to always report cases of torture that you see in your community, and also to be proactive when it comes to sensitizing your family members, your friends, your workmates, your colleagues to stop torture when it comes to our communities, our tribes, and our families, and overarching effect our country. And thank you so much for joining us on Issues at Hand today. We shall return on Friday. For now, God richly bless you. Have a wonderful day.